I have some clothes that are feeling tight. Can a tailor make them bigger? Well, that all comes down to the seam allowance in the garments. I'm going to give you a little fashion lesson here. This is one of the first lessons I learned in garment manufacturing, and it was really an eye-opener for me. A garment all starts with a pattern, and for our illustration, this is going to be a pattern. What we're looking at here is a pant pattern, front and back. A pattern is a stencil that is laid on top of fabric, traced and cut out. And when you sew the different pattern pieces together, a three-dimensional garment comes to life. Now the key here is the black line on the pattern is the sewing line. This is literally where it will be sewn together. And all the fabric beyond the black line is what we call seam allowance. This is extra fabric that lives inside the garment so that you can take it apart and make it bigger later. So now we're going to sew this together. And for this example, I'm going to use my daughter's trusty stapler. Sewing is essentially just tying two fabrics together using thread. In this case, we're going to use staples. The first key is you put the two good sides of the fabric together on the inside. So you're looking at the reverse side of the fabric on the outside. And now we're going to sew the outseam line of the trouser. So here we go. So now what I've done is sewn this line together, the outseam of the trousers. So the first thing you do after you sew a line is you open it up, and it can take a little finagling, especially if it's a curved line. And then if this were fabric, you would press this nice and clean so you get a nice clean line. But even now, we can start to see that this is slowly becoming a trouser leg. So your upper pockets would be here for your hands, this would be your leg, and then obviously you would sew the inseam together as well. But you're starting to see how this is a three-dimensional shape. Now on the inside, if we flip it back out, we still have our seam allowance here. So when you go to an alterations tailor to make a garment bigger, he's going to undo this seam, take the thread out, or in this case take the staples out, and he's going to sew it closer to the edge using this seam allowance so that when he flips it back out, then the circumference is actually larger. So to figure out if a garment can be made bigger and by how much, you simply calculate the seam allowance, the distance between the current sewing line and the edge of the cut. And then you multiply it by 2 because there's the same amount on both sides. Now you might be wondering, why do garments not have more seam allowance to give you more flexibility for future alterations? Well, the first implication is the cost. Most ready-to-wear garments have little to no seam allowance because the manufacturer is cutting the cost of all that additional fabric. But there's more implications than that as well. For example, if there's more seam allowance in a garment, the tailor or the clothes maker has to figure out how to hide it. It can create bulkiness or bumps, or can weigh down on seams and create waviness on curves. So it's tricky to leave a lot of extra fabric inside a garment to give you room for future alterations. For more information on this, you can find articles on our blog, and you can leave comments, and I'll try to expand on these more technical videos as well. Thanks for watching. Peace out.